Welcome, everybody, to the World of Ability Podcast Network. My name is Emily Gilmer, and am a podcast engineer here. I'm excited to bring you another episode of Who Cares with our friend Todd Lingel, who is with the Cares Foundation um, of Connected uh, Education and Drunk Driving, and so on. Um, and his Kamp Kares, and so I just met Todd in the last few months here, and we really care about this uh, topic. It's a very important one, um, but we're here every Wednesday morning, 10:45 Central, and I guess with nothing further ado, I'm gonna pass this over to um, Todd to kick us off and our great guest today. So
All
welcome,
right. Thank you, Emily. Appreciate it. Like Emily was saying, my name is Todd Lingel with Cares Foundation. My mom and my sister were killed by a drunk driver when I was young. And so I've started Cares Foundation. And where Cares comes from is my mom's name was Karen. That's where the Kare comes from. And my sister was Shelley. So that's the full name Cares. So I go around the country and speak to kids. And then I also have a camp called Kamp Kares that I put on in the summertime. And so that's something we'll talk about maybe a little bit later. But today I'm very excited to bring on our next guest. Here is Molly Welch with a second later. Molly, welcome to Who Cares. I appreciate you
Mhm.
for being here. And so I just want you to tell us anything you'd like to tell us about a second later, your story, anything you'd like.
All right. Well, starting way back 16 years ago, I was a junior at Auburn University, majoring in journalism, and I went home for a brief weekend to visit a friend of mine, and she went to school in Europe at the time, so I decided to see her. So I went home, spent the weekend with her, had lunch with my family, and then started the trip back towards campus. And um, because I was a journalism major, I had this tiny handheld tape recorder, which I took my interviews on, and I would believe I was listening back to it, dropped it, reached back down to pick it up, and went clear across the median and head on with the pickup truck. Now, honestly, I don't remember the accident itself months before, but the entire thing was recorded on tape, like everything from the country song I was listening to the sound of this gentleman saying, "Breathe easy, ma'am, help is on the way," um, to um, and then it's the sirens and paramedics, and it just cuts off. Um, the only part they don't hear is the sound of the crash itself. So I must have clenched the record button upon impact with the truck. As a result, I sustained traumatic brain injury. I had what's called diffuse axonal injury. That's where your brain shears or tears. I was in a coma, minimally conscious. While I was in that coma, I got transferred to Shepherd Center in Atlanta. It's a brain and spinal cord injury hospital, and I was there for about a month. And doctors told my family, we've really tried everything we can. She's not coming out of her coma or making any progress, so we're gonna have to send her home. So I went home with the hospital bed and feeding tube, and the doctors reassured my family that sometimes when a patient goes home, certain scents and sounds can bring them right out of the coma. That's just what happened to me. So one day, my father was in my room and started stretching my right arm, and the pain was so intense that I just bit the heck out of him. Um, um, so he said, "Look, Molly, next time, just tell me to stop." And so the next time I came in my room, just stretched my arm and mouthed the word "stop." And then my sister came in one day and started playing Bible songs, and I started to mouth along to the words. And Shepherd Center was smart because they sent me home with a webcam so they could watch my progress. So as soon as I was done mouthing the words, I only had a couple more criteria before I could go back for more intense therapy. Intense therapy consisted of speech, occupational, and physical. And I won't bore you with all those, but um, long story short, I went to tons of therapy at Shepherd Center and other places um, to try to regain a lot of what I had lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up going back to college. It took me an extra 3 years, but I finally walked across the stage to receive my diploma. And then it took another 3 years to find a part-time job. And it was in social media, which is kind of like my major of journalism.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem was it was behind a cubicle all day. So I know social interaction. So I started to get an idea. I started to think, why not use my experiences to help others not have to deal with all this dramatic stuff, fun and exciting stuff that I had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So I took Uber to Starbucks one day and started to have a conversation with the business owner. And he told me he would help me create a public service announcement and a nonprofit motivational speaking company. And so I have since been talking to TEDx, the legislation of Georgia, many high schools and driving schools, and also colleges, um, and then like Rotary clubs and um, things of that, Kiwanis clubs. Um, but I've only been to the state of Alabama 2 times, and that's the only place besides Georgia that I've been, and I need to continue to spread my message everywhere.
Absolutely.
So I need y'all's help to help me do that. So, but thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'm sorry that it happened to you, but I am thankful the strong woman you are and fought through everything and how you're coming out of it and helping others.
Thank you.
Um, you're welcome. That's huge because it's kind of like my story too. I mean, mine was more mental part of it. I guess kind of like the same, just just a different angle of things with the drunk driving and stuff. But I also had a friend of mine that was distracted driving. And I told him for years to please slow down and pay attention. And unfortunately, him and his wife were headed to church one morning. This was probably 8, 9 years ago now. Um, and an onion truck pulled out in front of him, and he wasn't paying attention. And he drove right into the back of the onion truck and killed him and his wife instantly. And their 13-year-old daughter was in the back seat. Thankfully, God had his hands around her, and she wasn't touched at all. But it was, it was 2 weeks before her 14th birthday, and I'd always told his name was John, and he used to spend some time with me. We worked together in the same company, and I'd known him. He was my youth minister when I was a kid, and I told him, I'd help take care of the kids or do whatever needed to be done if something happened. We both said it to each other. And so I went down there, and she turned 14 2 weeks later, and her mom and dad had put money in because they like to hunt and stuff, and they bought her a gun. And so that was the last thing that she was able to get from her mom and dad. Yeah. So, it touches home to me, and I do, when I go speak, I touch a little bit on it. And if you're okay with it, when I go speak, I would love to mention you in my speaking too, if that's okay.
Thanks.
Okay. The other thing is, I do want to get together with you sometime. I'll come up there, and I think I'm actually headed to Kentucky this spring, possibly. So I'll make a trip up there, and we'll get to a place to talk together.
Awesome.
And so, what's your nonprofit called? What's the name of it?
It's called A Second Later.
A Second Later. Okay.
Because, it only takes a second, as you probably know.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are the kids? How are they when you talk? Tell us a little bit about when you go, what you tell, what's the message? I know the message of don't, be distracted and driving and that kind of thing, but what additional things do you tell these kids?
I tell them to never give up, and don't quit, and continue with their education, because that was so important to me. And I could see giving up many times, and you just, like with schoolwork and stuff like that. Even before my wreck, I thought, who needs this research paper? But you just gotta keep fighting.
Yeah, that's a huge message, and I second that, because it was kind of the same thing for me. With your struggles and going through rehab and how strong you are, and that type of thing. There was moments, especially when I had the time I had a shotgun in my mouth, almost committed suicide, that I didn't think I was gonna come out of it, and for me, it was God. God was the only thing that got me through everything. And I know you're a church going individual yourself. And so, which we have that in common. And really that is, and man, I get chills when I just talk about that, because, in your moment that you have the tape recording of that is that's so huge.
It's crazy. I had never listened to it back again. I've listened to it probably like a total of 3 times in 16 years, but it just doesn't. It's not something that you want to hear again.
Absolutely. Have you? And I know you say you only listened to it 3 times. Have you ever had students listen to it at all?
I actually, one of my PSAs, a little clip from it is on there. It's the kind of like gentleman who is helping me use it. They found my license, and that's how they knew my name. So they were like, "Come on, Molly."
Right. No, that's got to be tough. And man, if that's a powerful thing to be able to use it in front of students, man, that's crazy. Like for me, you have your recording. My dad in 2012, I blew out my ankle, and I had to live with my dad and stepmom with my son. And my dad brought me my mom's purse she had when she was killed.
Oh,
And so that was the first time I ever got to see my mom's handwriting, and just experience that. And so I take that around with me when I speak, and pull it out with most of the time when I talk to kids. And I never know how I'm going to react. Sometimes there'll just be a wave of emotions that come over me, um, and sometimes I don't want to even pull it out. But it's like, man, if I don't pull it out, I know that I could be helping somebody really big here. And so that's been a huge thing for kids to be able to see. And I pull some things out in there, and it's taken me a long time. So 2012, what is it? 2025. So 13 years. About 4 months ago, I finally pulled everything out of the purse and looked at everything. That was the first time. Before, I just like pull her little notebook out or stuff like that. And so it was just huge.
What made you pull it out loud? Did you suddenly reduce your fear, or like, because it must have been extremely um, frightening to look at her stuff.
It was, it was kind of, I think, all the emotions I've thought about before. It's all the emotions wrapped up into one. Scared, excited, because I get to see something about my mom, because I only have one memory of my mom because I was 3 years old. Um, so it was both. And I think I was scared to pull everything out, because that was like the end of my mom, the end of the things that I know about my mom. So I think I was afraid to take it all out. And so, and it's weird. It's weird how our head, and I'm sure you probably know, your head plays games with you sometimes. And it's just like, man. And I keep going back and through my counseling, because I went through 4 years of counseling. It's like, okay, I'm doing this not only for me, but I'm doing this to help others. So that's kind of helps me, push myself through difficult times that I don't want to do something, or something's holding me back, or I'm struggling. Um, I always go back to, it's always easier for me to help others. So I kind of take my thinking back to like, okay, what am I doing that I have to fight through to be able to help others the best? And so that's what I've used for myself to get through hard things that I want to don't want to talk about, or, that type of thing. So I've forced myself to do some things that I didn't necessarily want to do or feel comfortable, but I knew that it would bring the most out to help others. And so it's been hard, but it's been good at the same time, because I've gotten way more comfortable. I'm an open book. Literally now, people ask me anything, I will talk about it. If it bothers me, hey, if I start crying, I start crying. It is what it is, um, because that's the real me, and I'm not going to hide that. Um, it's just going to show from my thoughts. It's going to show that it's real, and it doesn't. No matter how much I've gone through counseling, no matter how much all that, it's still going to affect me. It's going to affect me throughout my life. Whether people can see outward scars or inward, they can't see all the inward stuff that I deal with on a daily basis. Like, I get overwhelmed real easily, but that's part of my anxiety that I have. So I have to fight through that every day. Um, and it's also great for me to see individuals like yourself, Molly, because you give me inspiration to keep going and do what I'm doing, because I know you are, you know, we all wish things didn't happen to us. But you know what? You've taken it, like I was saying earlier, you've taken it, turn it around, and you're helping these kids. We neither one of us will probably know how many kids we've actually literally helped, but I know you've helped people and kids and adults and everything you're doing, going to the legislature to get legislature changed around. All of those things make a difference. So if there's anybody out there listening to this that thinks that they don't have a story that they can't help any way, you can help any way in anything. If you go to a group home in your area that you're at, go spend some time with these kids, because I won't get off on a tangent, but with these group, I go speak to group homes, and these kids feel like because they're in a group home that they're not good enough. And I tell these kids, I think you're in an advantage, because all of us, Molly, the kids you talk to, the kids I talk to, they have a choice in life. We have a choice: going to make a good decision and go to the right, do something good, or make a decision, go to the left and do something bad. And these kids, I tell them, I said, I know you're from a group home. You've been through some rough things in your life. I don't know everybody's story, but you have that choice in life right now, early in life, to go right or left. And there's kids that are being spoon fed by their parents still. They don't have a clue what life is about yet. And so I said, you're at an advantage. So I said, you got to look at it that way and move forward. And, I can't say enough about what you're doing, because and I'll continue to say it. I'll probably say it a few more times while we're talking. So tell me more about the legislation, what you want to happen. Tell me that part of things.
Well, it was HB 673, the House bill that I passed back in 2017 or 18. I think 17.
Okay.
But it was to get everyone to have hands-free driving, because you got a bill. If you're holding your phone, you can touch your phone, but just not hold it, which doesn't make much sense to me. But anyways, the first offense is $50, and then 100 and 150. And I just basically told my story, and I was one of many who told their stories. And so there are many that helped enact this bill, and it finally passed. So I was super thrilled.
Awesome.
But I think it needs to be a lot more serious. Like, the fines have to go way up, I think, for people to really care, because you always see people on their phones or texting. Well, like, it's not gonna change unless they hike it up a like crazy amount.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I thank you for doing that too. And I agree with you. And I see it here. I'm here in Arizona, and I see it all the time. People on the phones. And the crazy thing is, the law enforcement, there's so many things out there to enforce that they're very rarely enforcing it anymore, unless somebody's, swerving or something like that, which is unfortunate. In fact, even our bus system, I was working for a district here, and they didn't even like you putting address in your phone and setting your phone down. They actually you hold a paper while you're trying to drive if you're trying to figure out where to go. It's like, wow, you're totally distracted by
It's
holding
like,
a paper.
it's kind of like, do you remember when we had, or when there the states had MapQuest,
Yeah.
and you had to look it up online and print it out,
Yeah.
and you had to follow while you're driving.
I know that's crazy. And I think back back when I'm 52, back in high school or those days or whatever, all the distractions weren't out there. Didn't have the cell phone. Uh, you listen to the radio. And so it was a totally different era. And then the cell phones come in and all the media, and then everything the cars are faster. There's more gadgets on the cars.
The
Uh,
iPods.
yeah. So it's crazy with the technology, what's out there to distract us, that this topic isn't more upfront with everyone. And that's where I think we need to get on board, and everybody needs to be talking about it. Adults need to be talking to their kids about it. The adults need to be showing their kids when they're in the car not to pick up the phone. I'm guilty. I've done it before, and I catch myself. It's like, oh man, no, set it down. Because you keep going. It's like you got so many things you have to do, so many things, but it's like, no, I want to get there safely. Because I talk about it. I talk to these kids, like I said, about the distracted driving as well. And it's like, okay, if I get a ticket for distracted driving, man, what am I doing? It's like I'm really showing. I'm not, doing what I tell kids. Practice what you preach. The old saying is. Um, so what things do you have that you want to do here in the future?
Well, I just finished publishing a book through Amazon. Um, it's just a photo book, and I want to send it out to driving schools and churches because it's all Jesus related. Um, but um, I just think that would be cool if they had a book for their class that they, like a mandatory thing that they had to read. But I've been on a couple news stations, and I just want to continue speaking everywhere. Like I like to say in the United States, but because other places drive on the wrong side of the road, and so but I would definitely like to attend all 50 states.
That's a goal we both have.
Yes.
I want to do the same thing. Maybe we need to talk. We need to get together and figure out a way to do a little tour together or something like that.
Yeah. How many have you been in?
Oh, let's see. I've been in Oregon, Idaho, Washington, Arizona. I think just 5 or 6 states right now.
Wow, a lot more than me.
Well, that's because I've got ties. I used to live in Oregon and Idaho, so I do that. And then I have a friend in Washington, and Oregon. Oregon's the main one I've spoken the most. Of course, here in Arizona too. But yeah, definitely something we can talk about. A book is great. What's the name of your book?
A second later.
A Second Later. Okay, awesome.
And finally got published today, actually, or yesterday, because it was full of errors and I needed to redo it. So
Okay, well that's awesome. So anybody listening out there, A Second Later book, Molly Welch. Is it on Amazon?
Mhm.
On Amazon. So you can go on Amazon, A Second Later, buy it, read it, buy an extra set, and go give it to somebody, some kids. Go give it to your school. Say, hey, Molly needs to come here and speak. So give it to anyone that's a administrator, a teacher, anybody to help Molly get in and speak and get her around the country everywhere. So any last words you'd like to share with us, Molly?
It's not worth it. I don't care how you get distracted. You've got to completely put all your attention on the road.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I want to conclude our talk a little bit, but I do want to ask you to put a friend of mine, friend of ours, on your prayer chain. He was out this last Sunday in the desert riding his I don't know, it's not a four-wheeler, but his machine, cross-country machine, and with his girlfriend, and they had a confrontation with two bikers that were spitting up rocks in their face and stuff. And that was in the morning, I guess. Then later in the afternoon, the guys came back and they shot him in the head. So he's in the hospital right now in a coma, and he has the bullet in his head. They're not going to go in and get the bullet out. So
Is it too risky?
yeah, and I guess in a location. That's about all I know. His mom's there with him, not really wanting anybody around, so we haven't done much. But definitely put him on your prayer chain. His name's Justin. He's a young guy. He owns a gym. He's in good shape. So hopefully that's what brings him through this. So yeah, so if you can put him on everybody's prayer chain, that everybody's listening, that would be great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. So again, listeners, Molly Welch, A Second Later, go get her book on Amazon. Join us here every Wednesday morning at 9:45 Arizona time, Mountain Time. And again, I'm Todd Lingel with Who Cares. And we really appreciate you listening. And we'll be back here next week. And we look forward to talking with you. So who cares? We care. Emily, you out there?
So yeah, thank you, Molly, for coming on today. And as I said, we'll be back here next week, every week. I'd love to have you come on. Just let us know. You can call or text me if you have any questions at 608-886-9801. And encourage everybody to check out our social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and so on. And the great partners that we have out there. Jay Stoyan, Disability Channel, Microsoft Insurance from You, Lawrence Wingate Studios, Zach Clay on the Pack Channel, and Earl Williams of Midwest Plans and Podcast. I'll get with it do. But until next time, everybody has a safe and productive week and stay happy.